Good afternoon. My name is Robert Kendall, and today I'm going to be talking to you about incident policy. Handling an incident, and it starts with a policy and an action plan. So in class we've talked about incident policies and stuff, and that's what I want to start with, is just the basics. So when looking at a policy, we know the NIST guidelines. Establishing an incident response capability should include the following actions, right? Creating an incident response policy and a plan. The two kind of go hand in hand. Obviously, we have to develop procedures, set guidelines, select a team structure, establish relationships and the lines of communication, determine what services the team will provide, and then you got to staff them, train them, staff them, train them. Organization to-do list. Obviously, the organization has to secure the network, systems, and applications. That's the point, right? But we have to document their guidelines and what their guidelines are for interactions with other organizations. This is where the policy comes in. Focus on being prepared, of course, and emphasize the importance of incident detection and analysis. Detection is the important part, and analysis is just as important. And these become a problem in the beginning when you're trying to convince the board members of the cost, because they don't really see the returns, so to speak. And we've talked about this in risk management. So if you analyze these things when they're done, you review them, then you can use them as lessons learned, and you can get things changed or upgraded so that things don't happen like example incident again. What are policies? They define everything. We've talked about this. There's policy elements and there's plan elements, but the policy elements, they define and explain everything. And I have a handout we're going to go through in a minute that really kind of takes a look at this. The planning elements are more the actual doing of it. What does a team actually do, step by step, kind of like a flow chart. And procedure elements are each part of the plan or each part of what they do has a procedure, and that can be explained per organization. Sharing information with outsiders, that's pretty straightforward. So in the policy, we have the statement of the management's commitment. That's a legal document. The whole policy is a legal document, but basically, in order for the board to approve it and to legally show that we're committed to this, they have to have a statement of it. They're going to include the purpose and objectives, the scope. They're going to define things. They're also going to list the organizational structure, go over its roles and responsibilities. Then they're going to talk about ratings of incidents, the severity, so we have a priority. And then an important factor here is performance measures. How does a company really look back on an incident, how it was handled, and grade themselves? Usually it has to do with the cost. And reporting the overall incident and contact forms. So it's like the paperwork during and after. Elements of the plan, the mission, strategies and goals, senior management approval has to be included in there. Organizational approach, how the organization approaches the incident, who does what when. These are the different parts of the plan, of the action plan. How will the incident team communicate with other elements or the rest of the organization? And the metrics for measuring the response capability, and how this overall fits into the organization. In other words, when we're done, I tend to look at this as when we're done the incident and we review it, what then is the procedure for how changes are implemented or not implemented? Procedural elements. So based on your policy and your action plan, you create standard operating procedures. How are things done? Then you got to test it, validate it, and train it, and then repeat. This goes on and on through a company. Now we share information with outsiders, the media, law enforcement, and outside parties. Not going to really get into that too much, but that's part of the overall policy and plan, depending on what the organization does. Examples here. This is one thing I wanted to get to. I have a handout that was given to me by a friend who creates these things for companies. And this particular response plan is for the Western Oregon University. So let's take a quick look at that for a second. So now this is their policy. It says response plan, but it's their policy. And it's pretty straightforward legal document. So I'm going to kind of go through it quickly because you have a copy so you can look at it on your own time. But it talks about the incident response team. They're established to provide a quick and effective orderly response, blah, blah, blah. Sounds like a legal document because it is. It talks about the incident response members, who they are or their titles, who are going to provide supporting roles during an incident. That's important. Next, you talk about team roles and responsibilities. Team notification, types of incidents. In this case, they're talking about breaches with personal information. Definitions, responsibilities, management responsibilities, when notification is required, right? And a little further, here we get into the incident response team members and their contact information. And this goes on. So here's the staff duty. Here's a security officer. I'm going through this kind of quickly, but you should have a copy. But the idea here is that, like for example, here's the chief information security officer. Here's all their information. Here's some important things that they're responsible for. So all this gets listed in this policy. And it's pretty dry. It doesn't tell you how to do anything, though. That's important. All it tells you is roles and responsibilities. But it gives you the framework to start the action plan. That's what I want to talk to more specifically. So, example of an action plan. So, like I said, I work at Sorensen. But let's talk a little bit about what Sorensen is. Sorensen is a large telecom company, and we provide calling and interpreter calling for the deaf and the hearing impaired. So Sorensen provides services in the fields of technology. So we provide electronic video communication devices and software so that you can communicate. Basically, we put a video phone in your house. Interpreters, we actually have live interpreters 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So these people handle your calls and your tech support. And we provide the network. So the reality is we backbone off of larger telecom providers like AT&T. So for example, AT&T has run pretty much fiber optic cable, huge fiber optic cable, throughout the entire United States. And everybody rents time off of it. Your regular internet, your TV, and some people's phones, and definitely these video phones. We're a nationwide company. We're federally funded to provide all these services to the public for free. I work in what is referred to as a NOC, or a Network Operations Center. We are essentially the brainstem for the entire operation. We oversee that everything is working in all of our 178 server rooms across the country, 215 interpreter call centers, 15 live tech support centers, 5 main server router hub centers, and 5 backup locations. We essentially have a call center or a server room in every major metropolitan center across the nation. Since we provide a 24/7 service, including actual 911 calls from the public, our systems can never go down 100% for more than 30 minutes of what we call our time. Meaning, we have a 30-minute window to get our systems back up and running without penalty. If the net goes down due to others, i.e. a cable splice accident due to like some road construction, so that's AT&T's problem. If we're able to reroute all those calls within that 30-minute window, we receive a bonus for rerouting. Essentially, we must stay up and running at all times. If not, it's millions in penalties per minute that we're down. So there's the incentive, and there's also how we measure our response and our ability to handle incidents. So in the NOC, we monitor all the systems all the time. The NOC itself looks like a war room, which you would see like in a movie or something. We have like 34 big screen TV monitors. We have 7 call stations with computer centers set up and 2 emergency panic buttons. We have a staff of 8. We all do shift work. During the day, there's 2 of us on at all times, and at night, there's 1 person. Now, I wish I could show you their actual action plan. It's quite impressive, but I can't because it kind of makes sense. They don't want to divulge that information. Now, you see, to them, a hack is the same as a fire or an earthquake or a phone outage, or, a power outage. If the system's down, the system is down. However, I can verbally go through a simple scenario for you from memory and experience. So let's say an incident occurs. Okay? It usually begins like this. A red light begins to blink next to a city on a monitor. We usually give it 60 seconds to adjust. Sometimes the system's doing a patch, sometimes the system's doing any number of things, and it cuts off an area, reroutes automatically, then brings that area back up. This all happens in under 60 seconds. If after 60 seconds the red light stays on, we call that site manager to confirm the problem. And we try and find out, is it a power outage? Is it weather? Do you have a fire? Is the server room overheating? Because that happens a lot. The air conditioner just stops working and they just don't know it, so the server goes down. Or is it unknown, potentially a hack? For a power outage, weather, fire, and server room, we have procedures. Let's talk about the unknown, or a hack. If it's that, we escalate. Escalate means, first, we call the tech support team. Second, we call the analysis code team. Third, we call the regional supervisor. And fourth, we call the VP on call to let them know what's going on. Now the 30-minute window begins. If we're able to resolve it in 30 minutes, we're okay. If not, we have to escalate to the next level, which is called the conference call. That's where one of those panic buttons get hit. You hit that panic button, it automatically, the program is set up to initiate a conference call, which calls every one of the members that's supposed to be in the conference call, and they have to answer their phone. It's not a choice. So the call gets opened, or we call it opening the net. 5 of 12 board members have to be present, the CTO, the CIO, the manager of the tech team, and the manager of the code team. All these people are involved so that communication and decisions can happen immediately. Again, we're in a 30-minute window crunch. This has to happen right away. So let's say that the server is down, or the server room is down in Dallas. Then a main goes down in Seattle. So it starts to look like an intrusion. There's something wrong with the system. So the board members and managers are all on the conference call to be able to discuss and make decisions and approvals instantly. Managers of the tech team give updates on the fixes. Manager of the analysis team gives updates on the log reviews. They always review the logs first, because that's the first way to find out what's really going on. Then the logs tell them what instantly went wrong so that they can tell the tech team where to look, so you can see how it starts to fall into place. Now, all of this is discussed over the open conference call, so we hear about it in the NOC all the time. And what we do is we watch the system. So if they create a patch or they start to fix something, we can do a test call, and we can tell them if it starts working before anybody else. So we're intimately involved. Before I took this class, I did not even realize that I was part of an incident response team. Now I realize that I work at its actual command center. These incidents or calls can last for hours or even days. Even though our backups take over or we reroute all the call traffic, the problem must get fixed. These things usually end up being resolved and then finished with all the documentation. We have to document everything in the NOC room. We call, who was called, when, and what happened, what was the result, and then the next decision. So the final report is then generated and sent off to the review team. Sometimes things get changed, but most of the times we do not hear any of the changes because we don't really need to know. I wish I was able to show you our action plan for an incident response, but again, like I said, for obvious reasons, they don't want to release it. But based on my memory and my experience, this is a pretty good summary of what an action plan looks like while it's in process.